Robert Greene, director and editor of Procession. You've experimented with reenactments in your previous films, but this one is so unique and so empowering because you follow six men who were abused by Catholic priests when they were kids, and they try to address this trauma through scripted reenactments. And I feel like this film really puts the survivors in control of their narratives. It's not just you asking them to like retell their stories on camera. So did you know immediately you wanted to make the film this way, like just mixing traditional filmmaking with drama therapy?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question so much. I think what I knew was that we had discovered some things in the making of the previous six films, the last couple of which had used, these staged scenes to get at things that we can't otherwise talk about. We'd learned enough and also maybe made enough mistakes, frankly, in thinking about the process of filmmaking that the possibility of doing something more therapeutic was there. And that comes from a couple of things. My previous film, Bisbee 17, someone asked why we didn't have a therapist on set. And my answer was bad. It was like, oh, well, I don't really need that, or, and then of course, immediately I was like, that's not the right answer. And I need to think a lot about what's the point of making these movies in the first place, right? And that led me to discovering drama therapy myself by reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is about how it's a book about how trauma is stored in the body. It's stored in your muscles and your bones. And one of the ways you can maybe work through trauma is drama therapy. Drama therapy is the intentional use of theatrical arts for therapeutic goals, right? And I think like it just hit all at once, kind of like, what's the point of making movies? What's the point of putting cameras in people's faces? What is the possibility of drama therapy? Maybe I was trying to do drama therapy my whole career and I didn't know it. I wasn't educated enough to know it. And then how can we sort of combine the tenets of drama therapy that I was learning about with what we discovered ourselves? And it's very important to say we weren't doing drama therapy in the film at all, but we are very much influenced by, I guess, the tenets and the ideas of that practice. And so really that the idea came from the swirling sort of tensions and inspirations and focuses and trying to figure out what to do next. And I saw that news conference that opens the film. And once I saw that, it was just like, it almost felt like this weird discovery. Like if I feel like I can help somebody, I have to. And then we started the process of talking to these guys.
Mm-hmm. And so what was that process like? Because I understand Rebecca Randall's the lawyer. She picked these six guys. And so what was it difficult pitching this idea to the six of them?
Well, Rebecca's the backbone of the whole thing. We went to Rebecca. I mean, I think our first good decision was not trying to reach out directly to survivors with this idea. The first good decision was, let's talk to Rebecca. Let's talk to someone who can check all of our questions, all the things we want to try to do. We need someone, and we didn't even really know early. We had a very primordial idea at the beginning of what this was going to look like and what I guess the possibilities are. And going through Rebecca was like our first safety check in some ways. And she reached out to a clinical psychologist just to get the right questions to ask me, like, are you going to do this? What do you think about this? That kind of thing. And all of the trust that we were able to gain in terms of filmmaking came from the trust that Rebecca had already gained as their, lawyer, their friend, a person who had been with them throughout so much of this awful process of trying to get justice, basically. And then so we reached out to Rebecca. She basically, we wanted to talk to the three guys that we'd seen on that initial, that first press conference that I had seen. And then she reached out, she agreed to those guys. And then she reached out to other men that she thought could benefit in some ways from this process and who were also ready to go through the process. And we leaned really into a lot of trust with her, because that was the first steps had to be like, who could actually do this and who could benefit from it, And the first meeting you see in the film when we're talking through ideas it's very much, it's not just like, hey, I have an idea and I'd like to do this. It is very much, should we do this? You know, we were prepared that that was going to be the last shoot that we would ever do. You know, we were prepared. In fact, we were prepared every shoot forward that that might be the last shoot we ever do.
Wow. Well, it's also interesting because I think everyone understands generally that like the director is the boss on set, you know, like calls the shots. And so you're the director of Procession, the larger film at hand, but within the film, like these six men are directing their own individual scripted stories. So I guess like, what is that collaboration like? Because it's also talked about in the film, you don't want to trigger re-traumatization, but they also say like, the important thing is like, they're making the choices and you're not doing it for them. So what was that collaboration like?
Rebecca said very early the most important advice that she, not even advice, it's like the backbone of the whole thing, the sort of the spine, the blood of the whole thing is re-traumatization, and trauma really on its face comes from power being taken away. It comes from being diminished and put into a corner and shamed, right? And you know, all we had to do, and I say it's sort of funny because it's very difficult. All we had to do is never, ever, ever take the power away from the guys as they were making the film. Now, the first thing you said is usually how it works, right? The director is the quote unquote boss. There's a hierarchical relationship that goes with most movies where everything flows through the director usually, you know, and in fact, most documentary filmmakers will tell you that's only partly true. You know, usually someone else is holding the camera. Oftentimes someone else is holding the camera and there's a lot of power in that person's actions. The producers, a lot of us filmmakers, we have, including me with Doug, Sue and Bennett, my producers are the best in the world and they are incredible at what they do, you know? And so I don't ever really feel like I'm the boss of anything. I think I have a job as the director and frankly, a job as the editor, and I need to do those jobs. But a lot of the ideas flow through that director position, right? So in this case, you know, it's so those hierarchical sort of relationships are difficult to break. It's actually very hard to give power in a power scenario. Making films is often about power imbalance, frankly. And so we would approach that every single day in new ways, whatever was needed. Sometimes these guys were puddles and they were on the floor and my job was to lift them up. Sometimes they were creative, you know, bulls in a china shop and they just wanted to try things, you know, and it's like, let's just do it, you know, and my job was to help realize those visions. I think for these scenes specifically, each guy had their own sort of strengths and weaknesses based on what their own creative interests were. You know, like Michael is an interior designer. He's incredibly creative. He cares a lot about words. He cares a lot about symbols. He cares a lot about objects. He cares a lot about the room and the feeling in the room. You see when he's scouting the possible churches to film, and you can tell how much he cares about the interior feeling, right? So, you know, and there was parts of, so he would say, you need to direct some things, but these are the things I really care about, you know? And the same goes for all the guys. I would say every bit of it was deeply collaborative, you know? And it wasn't just like me and the guys off on a, you know, corner working and we come back to the group, everybody was working. You know, Rob came up with a lighting scenario. Rob Kolodny, who shot the film, he came up with the lighting in Mike's scene, you know, and Mike saw that and it was like, cool, like this is a cool thing to do, you know. It was deeply collaborative process, start to finish. And of course it could only be that way, because when you give power to the people on screen, what I learned very quickly is that doesn't mean they want you to give up your own responsibilities. They want you to be a good collaborator. They want you to lean into your expertise. And you know, that went through when I was editing the film. They were a big part of the editing process, but they ultimately were like, you got to make the decisions you think are right, you know? So it was always a conversation and almost always a healthy one.
Mm-hmm. I love that you give them credit in the film too. It's like it's directed by you and also in collaboration with them. So yeah.
And the film by credit up front, you know, it says Procession, a film by, and it's the six men and then my name and a whole bunch of other people's names, including like Keegan and Dabney, who did the score, and Danny, who, you know, recorded the sound, and on and on and on. And, you know, Monica and Rebecca and Sasha and all these people. The film by, that's not a gimmick. It's a statement of purpose. It's a statement of meaning. That film by credit really signals to you, hopefully, that it's almost like the beautiful ideal of what we're trying to pull off, you know?
And it's also like them reclaiming their power and like
Of
their
course.
agency. Yeah.
Of course. And so, you know, this whole thing started really with me realizing the one story that I couldn't listen to on the radio was, you know, a story about this kind of abuse. And that might, I mean, I was not abused in this way. I had a rough childhood, certainly, a lot like a lot of people. And I think maybe it just was too hard. I have children myself. I couldn't face hearing about child sexual abuse. And that part of the motivation, and maybe why that original press conference hit me so hard, was just realizing my own sort of responsibility in creating the silence and shame that these guys were dealing with every single day, and a lot of other men and women deal with every day. And so that giving up the keys to the car, so to speak, and saying like, this is ours, it's not mine, it's ours, is a way to sort of, you know, change that, is a way to face that silence directly and do something different.
For sure. What has it been like sharing this film with the public? I know you've been promoting it with the guys.
Yeah, they came to Telluride. It's been, I mean, you know, the thing that we were hoping for that has actually come true, which I'm just so excited about, is that we were hoping that like all the parts of the process of filmmaking and releasing a film, the pre-production, production, editing, release, all of it could be part of this therapeutic process. And it really has been. I mean, there's like, I just remember Telluride, 5 of the 6 guys are there. Monica's there, the drama therapist, and we're all reading, and family members are there, and we're all at a bar after our premiere reading the reviews, which a lot of filmmakers will know that like that's like a trial by fire a lot of times. And it's like, it's a very recognizable moment for a lot of filmmakers, I'm sure, reading those premiere night reviews and just watching. I mean, luckily they were good reviews, frankly, but even if they were bad, they would have still provided a moment for therapy. You know, we would have been able to use that moment to talk through what we had done, but luckily they were good. So it was really uplifting, and standing ovations, you know, for each of our screenings when the guys are there. I mean, for everybody who's gone to these screenings, I just want to thank you, because you've become part of this process in a way that's so direct. Like, you know, Ed Gavigan came out with this film as a survivor. He had been in the press, but only with an alias. And the fact that he could stand in front of a room in his city, New York, where he is a cool person with a lot going on in his life. He's not a loser. He's not a broken man. He is a cool guy who is standing in front and getting a standing ovation, multiple standing ovations from people who believe him and want to support him. It's like, I can't be cynical about that. You know, like I could roll my eyes at awards and ovations and review, all this stuff. You can maybe be cynical about it if you choose to, but I can't, because it's like, it has been so healing for these guys to get that validation. And for me and the other team members, you know, on the film, for us to be a part of that is incredible. And now it's coming to Netflix, which just, you know, that's a promise we couldn't have even made to them. You know, it's so beyond our dreams that there are really going to be a lot of people that are going to be affected by this.